Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. We're switching gears. We're doing NBA. We're going to talk the Milwaukee Militia. I don't know anything about it. Anything. I know the Chicago Bulls, and I have a Michael Jordan jersey.
We will make you a Toronto Raptors fan against your will because they're very much like Arsenal. So, actually, not even.
I don't want that. No. I don't want that.
They don't even compete. They don't compete. So.
We are here for the main podcast on Monday. I'm here with my boy George after a very tough weekend for Arsenal, which obviously we're going to get into and talk about, much as I wish we could talk about the NBA. So yeah, we'll be talking about that stuff, but if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify and Apple, make sure you subscribe, leave us a review. Thank you so much for being here. I know, like, after these types of games, the last thing I want to do is listen to anyone talk about it. So thank you for being here. Genuinely, we really appreciate it. George, how was your weekend other than Arsenal? Let's start there with some positive. You were like walking around a wedding convention or something.
Yeah, no, I was telling you off air. Like, I don't know. I think I would have rather watched the game on repeat for 6 hours than do what I did. I mean, if anybody that has, for those of you that don't know, like listener wise, like I'm obviously getting married soon. And so what we're doing is we're trying to make decisions on vendors. And there was some convention in Toronto that they hold in which all these vendors from around the world kind of come and they like sell you on products and whatnot. And so for like 6-7 hours almost, I was just at this convention with photographers, wedding cakes. I don't know how many cakes I tried. It was the worst thing. And at the end of the day, it's like, I don't care. I really don't.
It's a cake. Yeah,
it's a cake, and but yeah. So me and my fiance were just doing that for 6.5 hours, walking around doing vendors and being bugged about, do you want this and do you want that? And it was a very painful existence. Let's just say.
But to say you'd rather watch the game on repeat than do that is an indication. Unfortunately I was watching at home on my own. It was just to start here, it was just such a horrible afternoon of football, and it's so frustrating. We're obviously going to get into the kind of the overall narratives and all that stuff, and we'll try and make sense of it, but it's so painful. And do you know what it is, George, at the minute? It's boring. It's boring to watch us. I think that's one of the hardest things about this season so far, is it's become boring. Like, I think when I was listening to a space or something on Twitter last night, and someone made a good point. I was like, it's so true. If you have effective football and you're winning, you can kind of forgive the boringness part, because it's like you just got a winning feeling. When you're not winning and it's boring, there's nothing to hold on to. And we're so dull at the moment, and that is probably one of my main frustrations with it, because it wasn't like a loss that or even in the Newcastle game where it's like a 5-3 or something, where it's a really entertaining game. You're like, oh, it's all kind of swings and changes and whatever. It's just watching this team in that blimmin' white kit, which I never want to see ever again. Not the campaign. The campaign's a very important thing, but the white kit itself, I never want to see that kit ever again. Our performance on that kit has been horrendous. Watching a team in red and white just try and break down a block game after game after game. And to be honest, mate, I'm just done. I'm done with watching that type of football. There's other issues, of course, but just as a headline, that I want to see a change, even just for that, some entertainment.
I think I don't want to try to speak for people, but probably one of the biggest frustrations is that not just the outcome, but the play is predictable in a sense. And that's what attributes the boring nature. Like, I think I was even talking off air, if you want to talk tactics, we could. Objectively, that game, no one's going to care, because in a cup game, you just win. But objectively, again, another game where you give up 2.5 XG, Kai Havertz doing his best Giroud versus Monaco impression, in my opinion. Declan Rice as well. The chances that he's missed are inexcusable in that game. And I just don't think that you can win football matches if you're consistently going to do that. It doesn't matter who you are. You can be as good or as bad as you want. I mean, fundamentally, you've got to put the ball in the back of the net at least one of those times. And I mean, some of the decisions to even have Odegaard be the penalty taker, I don't think I understand. it's kind of ironic. I mean, people would have been calling out for Kai Havertz as a penalty taker there, but I think having missed only 1 out of 20 penalty in the league in that time. But I mean, if you had to look at his performance, I don't think he was scoring at that moment in time.
No chance.
Anyways, so when those things go against you, I don't care if you're prime Man City, you're not going to win the football match. And I think context has flown out, and why people feel deflated is because, again, there is this battle between I don't care, I need a trophy going on. And when you see predictable outcome, all the context goes out the window and people don't want to talk about it. And at the end of the day, it's just win, just do it. Yeah. Very Nike-esque. And I think we're reaching a point where we're feeling apathy, because I feel apathy from the club. If I was seeing the club, for example, and again, it's not just transfers, it's about an intent to fix something that's hurting. If I see somebody, if I have a friend, they come to me to a problem, right? And they say, listen, I'm having trouble with my girl. I've got, I get complained that I'm not showing up in the big moments, right? And then the next time she's got a birthday party and you don't show up, and I'm sat there saying, I mean, you're not helping yourself. You're not doing these things, right? Like you're not actively trying to change your situation. And I don't know how often you can come to me and say you have a problem that I'm going to care, because every time I give you advice to change it, you don't do it. You don't take the advice to come and change your situation. So I'm going to be apathetic towards it. I'm going to be like, listen, okay, fine. Like it sucks. I'll be there for you as a friend, but honestly, I don't care. And until you decide to change your situation, take ownership about it, then I'm not going to care. And I just feel like that attitude is applying to Arsenal quite a bit in terms of this season, because we feel that the season's done as a fan base. The fan base have seen in the last 2 weeks their chance where they felt like, okay, if at least we got a trophy, I could justify some of the poor things that I'm seeing this season. They feel that the Premier League's done in this last month. We feel that the Carabao Cup is an overturned kind of result that we can't do at St. James Park. We see that we've been knocked out of the FA Cup. And in terms of our injuries in our squad, no one is giving us a chance at the Champions League. So in terms of the mindset, it's by January, the season's done. In a season, I expected us to get over the line. And by this point, we should have got over the line. And no matter how much you believed in the project, the faith has been dismantled. And I'm seeing, I knew we would see the reaction like this after every poor result. But this seems to be kind of the biggest reason why I think a lot of people have apathy towards the club. Because, again, you're not fixing the situation. And ultimately, that's kind of the situation where I think a lot of people feel at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well said. And apathy is the word. It's the word I feel 100%. And it's in every... It's not to say there's no positives, as you kind of alluded to there. I mean, no one's going to like this stat, but I'm going to say it anyway. Martin Odegaard created 10 chances and had an expected assist total of 2 against Man United, both the most by a Premier League player in any game this season. But it doesn't fix our problems. It doesn't change anything. And I think like the things that we know we're good at remain. All the stuff, it's all the field tilt and the final third entries and all the stuff that we talk about. Yeah, that's all there. But the actual things, as you're saying in that analogy, the guy still isn't turning up to his girl's birthday party, so it doesn't make a difference, and that's the apathy. And you see it in too many aspects of the club at the moment, in terms of the tempo of the play, in terms of I think the proactiveness of the substitutions, in terms of how we are in the market, in terms of how we approach the duels, in terms of how we're. It feels like the sort of the atmosphere in the stadium is. It just feels it needs new energy, and of course that leads us to talk about the market, which obviously we will come to. But before we come to the market, I need to see more. Like I absolutely need to see more from who we have. I think there are some people who are just like a signing will fix everything. And I think a signing will fix a lot, but I'm also seeing fatigue and apathy and lack of new ideas and lack of direction and lack of fixing our problems from the players we already have at the club. And just one signing isn't going to fix that. And that's massively frustrating. And it creates this kind of downward spiral where the players don't react, so the fans don't react, so the atmosphere goes down, so there's no energy, so we don't play very well. So, and it just does this sort of downward spiral down the plug hole, and it's really frustrating. And
can I ask a question to you? Because so part of this apathy for me is I don't think we've ever answered the question how to replace Bukayo Saka properly. And personally, not to be a moment, but I think how we feel in this moment speaks quite a bit to the impact that Bukayo Saka has on the team.
For sure.
Not just in terms of how opposition approach us, but this is more of a meta question. Do you believe that we as a team have platformed the right players across the season and in our squad building and in our trust generally? Because I mean, you could have a look at Kai Havertz. You could have a look at Martin Odegaard, the experience in the team. Personally, when Martin Odegaard was out, and I'll just speak for myself, I didn't feel this level of apathy. It wasn't great. It wasn't perfect. But I didn't feel this level of predictable failures, poor, but predictable of not getting over the line. I still felt we could. Here, I don't see that same impetus. And, you look at Kai Havertz and Martin Odegaard, who for me are both fit. Both have had tough months in a time that the team needs them. And both you justify based on past performances. But fundamentally, I have a look at it. And those two are constantly platformed as maybe being a plan A, as being the most important parts of the team in different moments. And I've always really personally held back on that evaluation. And the reason I'm doing is because I'm sitting there saying, okay, we don't have somebody that I feel is our best player in the team. And our response to recreating spark hasn't been good enough. And, I would even go as far to say our spark against drawed or even game states is just really poor. But the response of the team to that kind of person out, do you believe that we have platformed the right players? Do you believe that we've asked the right questions, whether that's a market solution? Like, where do Arsenal platform next? Where do they center next? Where should they put their energy in?
Well, I think you sort of saw it yesterday where it felt like the game was slightly flowing through Martinelli at times, and that's the closest we have, and it's not enough. And I think this player, certain player, look, there's no way of replacing Mohamed Salah at Liverpool. There's no way of doing it. But what they do, if Salah went out, they would platform Trent, who also gives you this kind of renegade, this energy, this belief, whatever. If Trent was out, they could do the same with maybe Luis Diaz would probably be the closest. They give you an energy and a spark to a team, and then you move around it. What we're doing is we're platforming Alexis McAllister. Brilliant player, by the way, absolutely brilliant player, but not the player to be platformed. And we're expecting that energy and that lift from players who can't either don't have the talent level to do it or don't have the skill set to do it. It's not to say that these players aren't brilliant, Martin Odegaard or whatever, but we're looking to a Martin Odegaard to be the Saka energy replacement in the team, to be the reference in the team, to be the guy who lifts us out of something. That's not who he is. I'm not trying to defend Martin Odegaard. He's also got some stuff to answer for. But Saka is our only player, which is the problem. And I think what maybe you're referring to. Saka is the only player, I think, in our team who not only has the talent level, but has the ability to raise us as a team. And that has to come ultimately from the market. But if you look at Man City, they have Erling Haaland, but they also have Kevin De Bruyne. There's obviously the talent level there as well. But they're the kind of the rising tide that lifts all boats in the team. They're not platforming Bernardo Silva, which is basically our reference for us. It's another big problem, and a player who everything flows through can't be replaced. But if you're gonna replace them, don't platform someone who isn't that energy and can't replicate that. And that's basically what I think we're doing.
There's a moment in the game that I think really, I can't remember the minute. I think it was more towards the second half. But Martin Odegaard, it's a break. Martin Odegaard is running up, and he does a 360 pirouette on a counter. And that mentality is what I can't forgive, right? And, I was even having a conversation in some group chats. Is it possible that a Martinelli, Kai Havertz, and Sterling front line actually helps Martin Odegaard, I'm like, yeah, sure, but it does because they're all runners. And, this is a passer that can play, but doesn't matter if he's not going to play the brave pass. Doesn't matter if you're not going to go to the birthday party. And I think just that mentality for me is what is holding back the team from reaching their potential. But Bukayo doesn't do that, I guess is the point. So who else on the 11? Because you can't, if you want to not just isolate Martin Odegaard, no problem. Who else on the front line takes that counter and carries it up the pitch and actually keeps us in the final third? That has been the biggest quality that I really worried about with Bukayo Saka being out. That's why I felt like Ben White became so important. And the fact that we don't have Ben White is a massive issue for me because he doesn't have the technical ability to keep the ball in the final third, but he has that running power to get you up the pitch, to be that outlet. And he will run those 40, 50-yard runs. We don't have anybody that's willing to do that on either side of the pitch, right? Yeah. So that's out. And then Ethan Nwaneri is a major component that I feel has the technical ability to be secure in contact. And then we lost him. So none of these solutions are fair or none of these are ideal, but I think part of my issue is it goes beyond even just that for me, and that we've really platformed players that I think need to have some serious conversations. I mean, for myself, I'll just be quite frank. I don't believe that a 300K a week player can have the performance that they've had over the last month and a half and be justified as one of, if not our top earner. I don't think that's fair to expect. You want to rise in bad moments. Now, it's not just on Kai Havertz, but it's the idea of what you give him and what you platform in the team. I look at Martin Odegaard. Okay, he's had a baby. He's coming off an injury-ridden season. He's obviously done brilliant last season. One of your best players, because a lot of people call him the best player in the team. That's what was happening all of last season. In the biggest moments, he's not stepping up. And, I think far too many people, there's Jesus, there's Trossard, there's a lot of problems in the attack, generally speaking. But I think going forward and trying to find solutions instead of picking one person is we've got to find our identity in attack, because we have an identity in midfield and we have an identity in the back line. We don't have an identity in attack. And that is probably my biggest frustration. And it's going to be a decision made going down the line. Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to ask these tough questions. And, my biggest thing is I ask people, do you believe Kai Havertz can be the number one center forward for Arsenal? And a lot of people will cite a run that they've done well in. For example, Kai Havertz in the run-in was probably our best player last season, right? Very clinical. His output objectively is great. Is a month and a half of bad form fair to judge a player and say, you can't be that guy? Probably not. But I think it says quite a bit that when the team needs you the most, that you don't step up. And that, for me, is the bigger issue. It's not that he's useless or that he can't be an asset in the team. But it's a matter of when you're platforming your attack and when you're building an attack and you're saying, okay, I need to have 4 people in attack that I'm going to build around. He is one of the pillars for a lot of people. And we need to have conversations if you trust him in big moments to deliver. And if he's ever shown the aggressiveness in possession to give us something different that the team hasn't had. That's my biggest point, where I feel like we have a lot of nice players that come to the party, they do their job, and in their moment, in their game, and in their own way, in a specific environment, they can excel. But I'm asking, when the chips are down, when we're in this moment, okay, do we have enough attackers that can change the way they play and the team play to dig us out of results? And I don't think that's ever going to be Martin Odegaard. I don't think that's ever going to be Kai Havertz. I don't think Trossard, Sterling's alone. I don't even think Martinelli necessarily has an ability to do that. And that, for me, is a problem. That, for me, is what I talk about platforming. None of this player debate. When I reference a platform on a team, that's what I view as proper platforming.
We need someone who can get... I mean, I slightly push back on the identity because I think the identity is Bukayo Saka, but that's a problem.
Well, yeah,
like that's the issue is when it goes. I mean, who else is there? It's kind of what you're saying, and it's the player who's gonna, as you say, kind of change the game and provide impetus. And I think on the kind of the wage conversation. Look, I said this on the instant reaction yesterday. Kai Havertz showed me enough, I have to be fair, before the summer window, where I thought I would like his signing, but I'm willing to give him a go. If you're sat there going, no, I always knew it was going to go pear-shaped, well done you knew the future. I didn't. I saw a 6-month sample of Kai Havertz leading us 100-point form, and I thought, okay, we might have found something here, let's go with that. He has not then moved forward from there. And I'm happy to hold my hands up and say that I got that wrong. But I also think it would be disingenuous. I think there's a lot of people listening who would also probably say, oh, I always knew. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. We all saw that form at the end of last season, and I was happy, so I'm fair. But now it's about finding someone else in the attack to give us that kind of impetus. And it also, what frustrates me, and it's kind of a bigger thing here, Liverpool, and sorry to constantly use Liverpool, but they are a good example. Liverpool can create that impetus and create that fear and create that sort of that energy through the team in terms of the way the team plays. Because of the way we play in terms of control, it's even more important to go and sign someone in the final third who can bring us something energy-wise in those game states where everything's settled, everything's pushed forward, and because we're relying on one player, it becomes even more important to have someone who can pull something out of anywhere because the team isn't creating this energy in the stadium. So again, we go back to the market, but we're talking about the same thing.
What's your favorite thing about Liverpool? And I don't mean like this isn't like a gotcha moment. Like I'm trying to identify, because I have a really clear idea about what we're missing, and I know people on this podcast that listen probably are tired of hearing this, but I'm going to attack it from a different angle and not say the buzzword. When you look at Liverpool or Real Madrid in full flow, what is the thing that you identify with? Liverpool in full flow, and try to be really specific. Like, what is it that you feel they do well? When you see the best Liverpool moments, the best Real Madrid moments in the Champions League, what is it about those teams? Like, what quality do you immediately go to and say, that's what they do best?
To me, they move the ball at the pace that you need to move the ball. And we don't.
But in what game state? Like where do you?
Well, it's not even necessarily transitions in terms of counter-attacking. I mean, we spoke. Rohan and I spoke about this the other day. Arsenal's high turnover conversion to shot has absolutely fallen off a cliff. Absolutely fallen off a cliff. So it's not about us breaking from the edge of our box. It's about moving the ball quick enough when we win the ball high up the pitch, and we just don't do that.
Yep, and it comes down to that. For me, because again, transitions and counterattacking, it's not just that, but it's about, we have to create our own false transitions. We've done this. We've spoken about this on the channel for over 2 years now. That's what we do. That's what a turnover leads to. It's a false transition. You lead into somebody into an area where you've stolen the ball and you want to do a quick underlap switch. You want to do a quick switch to the opposite side. That's a moment of creating transition, even in settled play. Still transition, right? Doesn't have to be a case when you're at your box and you've got to carry and it's a counterattack, right? For me, I'll just speak. When I look at those Liverpool teams and the Real Madrid in the Champions League, it is in space or not, but in moments when you've created immediate possession, they make the right decisions to get the ball up the pitch quickly and stay in the final third. They may not always finish, but the speed to which they capitalize on a loose possession that is brought to the final third and kept there is immaculate, always. And that's what I remember. When you look at Ronaldo, the best teams, even Barcelona in full flow, okay, they had brilliant tiki-taka, but when they really broke, they broke at pace with efficiency, and it was frightening. I look at some of our best teams, the Invincibles. You look back, what are the moments that I look at? Thierry Henry against Liverpool carrying from his own box up. Okay, yeah, that's quality. But what is it that he's able to bring? There's a certain level of running power. There's a certain level of decision-making that he makes. And the speed. You are from your box to the other box in 10 seconds, right? Though that for me, I don't identify with this team except for Bukayo Saka. And that for me is the fundamental problem.
even Saka, mainly because of the game states he's playing in. But we're basically saying the same thing about the impetus, and this is kind of my point about Liverpool is they can create as a team. They can create that impetus and that energy to lift you, to open out the legs. So another thing is like running. Just running, opening out the legs and seeing your players move quickly. It creates a feeling in the team, in the stadium, in the fans, in the team itself, in the other team. They defend you differently. Being able to run at that pace and open out your legs and move the ball quickly, it creates a different energy, which could, in some ways, cover for Saka, for us, if you see what I mean. It just create that chaos. And, we've covered this in so many different ways, but it is such a big concern. I want to switch gears slightly, and then probably come on to some questions, because we've got loads of questions, and to be honest, how many different ways can we say we need it forward? Do you know what I mean? But I suppose I want to ask this question. You don't want to go too early, and I think these things need to be considered at the end of the season. But I hope we're genuine in our end of season things, even if we win the Premier League or win the Champions League. Maybe we win both. Who knows, George? I hope we would be genuine and say there were concerns this season that weren't solved last summer that need to be solved, even if we go and win the Premier League by 10 points, right? And I just hope that the concerns that we have are fairly applied to the team, by which I mean, what are the consequences? For this run, what do you look at and say, I kind of want this to happen? Is it a certain player coming out the team? I'm not trying to lead you down a certain path, but is it a certain player coming out the team? Is it is it consequences for us? I don't know, whatever. I just want there to be more of an accountability culture at Arsenal. And it feels to me, I worry that we might sort of have a lift towards the end of the season and then forget this period. I think one of my big things from last season is maybe we didn't learn the lessons properly from that poor run in December because of the way that the back end of the season went. And then we're paying for it again this year. And I want to hold on to this, even if we do well at the end of the season, to know what we need to do in the summer. But yeah, I don't want to lead you down a certain path, but I'm just interested in your response to that.
So there's two things, and I'm going to speak general, and then I'll give you specific names as well. Because again, it's not a specific profile. I think one of my biggest frustrations that I've looked at is people make this a player debate when I think it's a lot bigger, personally. And it is more ingrained in how you view how you want to attack in general. Because it's not about recruiting this different player and he's going to solve you. And pinning it on a player and just one type of player is ridiculous to me. But there's two things that I want. One, I don't think settled blocks are here to leave. In the future, settled blocks will be there. So deal with it. This idea that, we'll find players that deal with settled blocks better. And there's two things that we just don't have. We don't have somebody in the box that moves people. Deal with it. Find somebody. I don't care. It doesn't have to be somebody that I like in Victor Osimhen. It could be a Dusan Vlahovic. It can be an Evan Ferguson. There's so many different types of forwards that can do that role. But we need to find somebody that can move people in the box, specifically. Then we also need to find somebody that is able to progress play up the pitch with speed, but also keep us there. They need to have tempo in terms of their attack. They need to know when to be vertical, when not to be. And they need to understand that on a fundamental level. Antoine Semenyo, Bradley Barcola, Brian Mbeumo, vastly different types of players. It's not even a profile thing, but all three of those people understand that to a T. It's to the crux of their ability. They know how to tempo the attack, make the right decisions when to be vertical, when not to be. They're progressive outlets. They're physical. You can't bump them off the ball. And they get you up the pitch, both as an outlet in a runner sense, but they also are technical enough to keep you in the final third. Those are two things that this team drastically lacks. And if you find those two things, then I'm sorry, I don't feel that settled blocks are as much of an issue. There is going to be a third kind of problem that I do think we need eventually, but I think we have a lot of young talent that's coming through that can solve it. And that is finding a creative pass centrally and being able to find solutions in tight spaces that don't just rely on wide cutbacks, right? Yep. Finding solutions centrally. Now, I do think we've got things there. We just don't use them properly. And, if you're not going to use them, then buy something that you do trust and you do use. But to say that we don't have the profiles there, I think is unfair. But we also, maybe one thing that is fair is the starting midfield in terms of the 2 8s. Don't do that enough. In Mikel Merino and Martin Odegaard, even in everybody's summer plan A, that was the midfield, right? It was Merino, Rice, Odegaard. I wouldn't call those 8s incredible at finding central solutions. They improve it, but they're not somebody that excels in those areas. But yeah, I think we have those profiles in the team. But the first two for me are key. You have somebody that can move someone in the box, which immediately has this idea when everyone camps in our own box. How do we solve it? Find somebody at the end that can move people. Then to fix the transition issue, that needs to happen, mate. That is the biggest thing holding Arsenal back, in my opinion. You can have Alphonso Davies, by the way. It doesn't have to be from even a winger. Alphonso Davies is a way of doing this through fullback positions in which he understands the tempo of when to be vertical, when not to be, and to really exploit. And he has the technique, by the way, to keep you in the final third. It's not just that he's a physical running outlet. He has the technique that he can actually keep you in the final third. And I think those two things need to be paired together. And so it's not even a position debate, mate. It's a mentality. Those types of players, when you add them to a team, you become a different threat entirely. And when you combine with what we already do well, one frustration I'll have with Mikel, you have bought Gabriel, William Saliba, Declan Rice. As far as rest defense goes and talent, I'm sorry, there's no one in world football that boasts that. And yet, we are more conservative than most in terms of committing people for. Why did you buy that talent if you didn't trust it to defend big spaces? Mm-hmm. So that needs to change.
Yeah, and if we trusted that we could score 3 or 4 goals a game, then we wouldn't be so conservative, because we might concede 1 or 2, but that's okay. To be honest, I was more getting at sort of looking at our players and learning the lessons. And I think, it's unfortunate now because he's got injured, but I think I have to say there's players in our team now, players like the Tomiyasus who have not been available in this run, players like Trossard, who I think has underperformed, and I was saying all summer that I thought it might be the time to cash in on him, and I was laughed at. Players, obviously, Sterling is on loan, but players like Kai Havertz, probably Jesus, I know it's unfortunate because he's been injured. Players like Martinelli. There's a lot of players that I'm looking at, and I have to say I want to remember this period, remember where they were, remember what they do, remember did I feel they stood up to be counted, and a lot of them haven't. They haven't done that. I want to be more ruthless as a team. Because I think when you're not, and we weren't ruthless enough in the summer with certain profiles and with certain people and in the market and et cetera, but when you're not, you end up in these situations where the absolutely fine margins, if we play that game 100 times, we'd win it 99 times. Yeah, well, why do we end up on the one out of 100 outcome, seemingly a lot? I think it's because we haven't been ruthless enough with certain profiles in the squad. And I was saying this last summer about, we're talking about Smith Rowe, and that's an issue of sort of replacing him. So park that for a second in terms of Smith Rowe. But that's the guy who, I don't think Smith Rowe necessarily, he might have solved certain issues in our squad, but if we'd replaced the profile, we wouldn't be looking back at him going, oh, could we've got Smith Rowe. If we'd moved Trossard on last summer and got a proper forward, a proper level-raising centre forward, we wouldn't be looking back at Trossard going, oh, maybe if this, that and the other. I want to look at those types of profiles in the squad, whether it's through injury, whether it's through unavailability, whatever it might be, and be ruthless in the summer and remember this period, remember how they performed, remember what happened, and be frankly a proper club, be a Bayern, be a Madrid who would not forget this, and they would be moved on.
My only thing is look, I'm a fan. I'm not going to hide. I'm a fan of Smith Rowe. My biggest issue was not buying a replacement to it. And ironically, a Smith Rowe in this bad period solves a lot of what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's not even a player thing, because that's subjective. Whether you love the player or you don't, that's on like a fan listening, right? It's just this idea that we don't replace it and that we don't find what the problems are. And I hope, I just want to add to what you just said. I hope that our favorite players aren't void of that criticism. It's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
Because we look at, I am going to say Martin Odegaard, I feel has really disappointed.
Agree.
As the captain. Like, if you're going to say he's the captain, right, mate? And like, and Kai Havertz, he's the top earner of the club. You can't be having the performance that you had yesterday in these moments. When you need that, you can't have a Monaco performance when we need to progress in the cup, mate, against Manchester United. Yep. And over the last month and a half, and again, it's not just those two players, but I use them because they have their defense league just as much as Thomas Partey has his defense league. And there's different defense leagues in all of the team. But I hope our favorite, and even myself, like, I look at Martinelli and I like him. There are things that really annoy me about him, and he's got to fix. And if he doesn't, I need to buy somebody that gives it to me. And that's why, personally, I like attributing it to a trait is the only thing, because if we don't know what we're missing and we don't clearly define that, then we can't fix it. And I think that we're going to look at an identity in attack. And that, for me, is the biggest conclusion of this season. We need to realize how important Bukayo Saka is. Personally, that's the last thing I'll say on it.
And help him.
We need to help him. And we also need to be fair, where this idea of just Bukayo Saka and hope, or Bukayo Saka and inshallah, so to speak, is not a viable way to proceed. And I just want him to have the platform that other people in this team have had. And that means buying him support. That means getting him in more central. That means making him your Mohamed Salah. When you've got a talent like that and you see how you feel now, I hope everybody, when he's back, remembers how they felt when he was gone. I maintain, out of all the players that have left us through injury, both this season and last, and I even include William Saliba in the run-in, I don't feel as dejected and apathetic as I do when Saka's not in the team. And I think that tells you everything that you need to know about his importance and what he gives you.
Yep, absolutely. And I suppose the overall message is we'll be doing pods, and I just want us to remember this time. Like, remember who stood up, remember how we felt without Saka, remember what Odegaard was doing, remember what Havertz was doing, remember what Rice was doing. Everyone's on the list. I'm not saying that anyone's exempt from criticism. Remember what Arteta's doing. These things. I just want us to remember this period, remember the lessons, and even if the rest of the season, which I suspect, like, the season can't go much worse. So, like, in terms of how it's gone so far, we're basically out of 2 cup competitions, and we're close in the league. But I suspect in the second half of the season we'll actually be okay. I want us to remember this time. Remember who stood up. Remember who didn't. Remember what lessons we learned. And get Saka some support.
And you know what's ironic? Just to really tie that off with a bow, somebody that I felt had both a very mixed bag, but Gabriel, our center back, at fault potentially for the goal, and then responds by scoring the goal. Like, that mentality, you can never look. He may have moments where he makes mistakes, which, by the way, have been few and far between in the last 2 years. But that mentality within minutes of then turning it around and changing it is the mentality and the type of player we need to recruit.
Absolutely. And on the flip side, David Raya, William Saliba, Jurriën Timber, by the way, still coming off the back of an ACL and killing himself for this club. Gabriel Saliba, Raya, Timber. Even players like Jorginho, who won't be around long, but who are coming in and doing the job. Like, let's remember those guys as well. You know what I mean? And I think credit to them because, actually, stability-wise, we haven't fallen off a cliff. We really haven't. There's things to tweak, but that isn't the big issue.
Put ball in back of net.
That is issue. That is the issue. That's brilliant analysis. Well done, guys. We've smashed it. Let's come to as many questions as we can. I think we've kind of done the doomer woe is us. I said let us know anything you'd like discussed. Ideally not Arsenal, as a joke. And then we've now got a lot of questions that aren't about Arsenal, so we've got to leave those to the end. Let's come to as many as we can, starting, of course, with the Discord. If you'd like to join us on Discord, you can. Make sure you sign up as a patron or a YouTube member. You get access to the Discord. Over 250 of you in there now, which is amazing. Chatting, dooming, but enjoying together. Ash11 says, how many attackers do we actually need? I'd say 3. So our group at the moment is Saka, Jesus, Martinelli, Trossard, Havertz and Sterling. I think it's undeniable that Raheem Sterling is not going to be signed on a permanent. So that's 5 forward players.
And Reece Nelson too.
Oh, and Reece is coming back, but I suspect he'll move on. So let's call that 5. So that's Saka, Jesus, Martinelli, Trossard, and Havertz. If Jesus has done his ACL, which is the current rumor, we're not saying it's a rumor, then big conversation about him. I think we certainly need a wide player on the left, probably, and I think we certainly need a forward. So that's 2. Do you think we need anything else? That's before sales.
No, I think we need 3.
So are we saying 3?
No, I think we need 3, and I've said it. Well, I thought we needed 2 last year, and I wanted 1 this year. That was like my plan, right? Like I thought we needed a center forward and a versatile attacker. And then I thought, okay, 2025, we're looking at maybe 1 more player so that the rebuild isn't as much. So we haven't done what we did last year. So we need 2 from last year and 1 from this year, in my opinion. And
did you see the clip of Šeško scoring, by the way?
I did. I did.
It's like he was watching the game and then went, right, Mikel, watch this.
Look, mate, it's simple. I think we need 3. And by the way, I don't think it has to be expensive, mate. Like there's this really weird thing. Every department has had almost £100 million of investment except the attack. I'm sorry, they deserve it.
Mikel said that now as well.
Yeah, like they deserve it. Mate, Tyler Dibbling and Brian Mbeumo on the right wing are both players that are in the last 18 months of their contract, and by the summer will be 1 year. By the way, Mbeumo should be somebody that we're looking at right now. I'm sorry. You've put yourself in emergency panic mode. You have a look at that situation. You ask a question. I think at left wing, we've talked about it. I mean, I do think we should maybe do a scouting on Bradley Barcola. I never even knew that he would be available, but the fact that, Kvaratskhelia has gone to PSG and that's an option, I think he would be incredible. Absolutely the profile that we need.
Let's do it tomorrow if you're available.
For sure. And then Antoine Semenyo is on the list. Nico Williams, of course, we know about that. I think at center forward, we've talked about it at length, but, I still don't understand why Victor Osimhen's not a question. But, if you don't want to look at that, I think Samu Adjahoa from Porto is somebody that I really, really like. That's also not somebody that's going to be a huge, huge fee. Both of those players, by the way, are going to be in the £65 million range. Mm-hmm. The left wings that we've talked about with Barcola and Antoine Semenyo are going to be anywhere between 45 to 60 million pounds. And people in the last year of their contract are going to be at maximum 25 million pounds. So if you do the math, you're looking at 120 to about 130-ish million pounds of investment to get 3 attackers that I think revolutionize the team. Now, is that a lot? Yeah, potentially. But I think there's got to be a lot of turnover there, and that needs to be ruthless.
And Mikel said now, so in his pre-United presser, Mikel said on whether he would like a versatile forward. In the front positions, compared to what other clubs have done and the expenditure that we have there, we are very far from it over the years for different reasons. And we discussed that before, he arrives with Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli. There is a reason for that to some degree. Firstly, that we have already have very good players and we have many necessities in the squad to achieve in that period. And then he said on the focus on his squad building shifting from defence. Yes, it will, because we have certain limitations and we have a lot of gaps and a lot of things to cover to become the team that we want, and then the ability of those players. Can you afford them? Even if you want to, sometimes it's not been possible, and that's a wider conversation. But I kind of want to slightly switch gears based off that, which is I think where we're putting, if we're saying we need 3 forward players in the next window, or certainly as soon as possible in this window, ideally, where are we putting the blame for that? And I think long term, there is a conversation with Mikel because he's obviously involved in these conversations in squad building. Maybe he hasn't pushed enough. Ultimately, we don't know. But I don't know how you feel. This January, with a Jesus injury, with a Saka injury, with a Wanyeri injury, with the issues that we're having that we need to solve, with who's on the market, with what's going on in the market, with Marmoush and Barcola and Leao on the bench and Rashford moving and all this stuff that, top wingers moving around, I am looking nowhere but at the Cronkies this January. Over a wider sample, Mikel's in the conversation. But this January, if we don't move, that is on KSE.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
Because Mikel has said himself, we need investment there. He said it subtly, and he said it's not in his hands, so he said it explicitly. We've got 3 injuries, and as I say, the market is moving. So to me, this January window, the remainder of it, the 15 days, which I can't believe we haven't done anything yet at all. I'm shocked we haven't heard anything at all yet, but we're still waiting. That's on KSE.
I the one thing that I have said, I think that I might even go as far to say that I would turn against the owners completely, because I think it's a mentality thing that is completely ridiculous. When I pair, by the way, the summer, which I don't also put KSE out of criticism for, off the back of a record-breaking season, you're making a profit. A profit? Okay, we didn't have to spend massively, but you're making a profit. We didn't do that without Europe, mate. Like, and then when you have I don't have this to confirm, but every single report says we are far and away clear of PSR headrooms. And you just have to wait till May to get those accounts officially. And I put that in quotes because, yes, we are fine financially. There's no financial limit. When he's talking about limitations, let's call a spade a spade. The board hasn't approved it. I don't know the reason. I'm not on the board, but the board has not approved it.
Yeah, I think where he said that historically, I would, because also he has to, the first 2020, I think it was, he only got 80 million or something, which is fair because he has to prove himself a little bit. But now that is the board. Yeah.
Yeah. And this idea of, let's just call it what it was, where there was rumors that there had to be one player in and one player out, was the rule that KSE had put in the summer. If you want signings, that's what you must do. Ironically, even when we did that, we didn't even get the forwards that we were allowed. We weren't even allowed to go and press forward with it. So we did make those signings and we weren't allowed it. So then I look at January now, and you're right. Mikel has made it clear for months. And you know what the irony, mate? The board has too. There was reports after Bayern from The Athletic that the boardroom recognized that they needed X factor. So at some point, someone's lying. Someone's telling porkies. I don't care who you like and what side of the area you're on. They all, you can't look at what's happened now. It's got to the point of extenuating circumstance, right? When Ari injured, Saka injured, Jesus potentially injured. Let's assume you bought the signings. Mate, even if we bought signings in the summer, having 3 attackers out of your front line of 6 available is grounds for any club to go in the market and react. Period.
It's irrelevant of who you are.
It's irrelevant on whether you're Mikel in or Mikel out as a mentality. And if you don't have that, I'm pissed off. Mate, a player that we let go and we had in our academy, Donnell Maulan, who has gone out to Dortmund, has done brilliantly, has just been bought by Aston Villa for 23 million euros. Don't tell me there's not players, mate. This market is exploding as well, and I'll be really annoyed. I actually think that this is going to be one of the more spending Januaries that we've had in recent memories. You're looking at City that are potentially on track to spend 170 million euros. By the way, I don't think rightly. I will say that. I don't think the City business is like, oh my God, I'm frightened now. But they're proactive, it's intentful, and they recognize that there's a problem, so they're trying to make amends to it. I may not agree with the solutions, but the intent is to intervene, do something about it. And the global market has so many players on the move right now that I will not accept us not being aggressive and intentful for trying to do something.
Completely agree. And if there are any complete Arteta outers there who are saying this is all on Arteta, let me put it like this. David Ornstein said on a recent podcast, Mikel would want to sign Nico Williams this January window. Nico Williams has about a 60 million euro release clause. If you don't think, if we don't get a signing forward and you blame Mikel, what you're saying is David Ornstein is wrong and he's lying and you know. And Mikel didn't want to sign anyone. David Ornstein is told one of the most, I would say, reliable person we have on this is saying that Mikel wants this signing. There is a 60 million euro release clause and the Cronkies basically don't want to pay it if it doesn't happen. So that's it. And then you have to look up.
Yeah.
Let's come to this one from X, from Moj. Moj? Is Arteta acting stubborn, or is he trying to protect his players when he keeps saying we do everything right except scoring? I have a bit of a rant about this. If you're analysing an individual game, it is absolutely valid, and this is the problem with nuance just goes out the window and everyone just gets angry at each other. It is absolutely valid to say that we are not having this conversation if Kai Havertz just finishes his chances yesterday and Declan Rice just finishes his chances yesterday. So when Mikel is talking about a game, I think he is absolutely right to say we did everything right, we just didn't score. That is a good analysis of the game. That is what happened. If you're saying, but Mikel, that was happening in the same kit a year ago against Liverpool, basically the same thing has happened. You're having all these chances, all these box touches, whatever. We've had periods where our chance creation's fallen off a cliff, but actually in terms of the big chances created in the last couple of weeks and overall basically this season, we've done all right, especially with Odegaard and the team. He is right to say that on an individual game. On a wider basis, if that's his reasoning, I'm annoyed. So if we're analysing an individual, as I say, cool. I don't think this is the case because I think what he said about forwards and he had a comment about Isak recently, which was really interesting to me. Go and watch it post Newcastle in the Cup and watch his wording of exactly what he says about it, because even when it's reported in words, it doesn't quite do it justice. He basically says they have top quality up there. He sort of admits we don't have top quality up there. I think he is saying, outside of the context of an individual analysed game, we don't have the quality, so that's the problem there. But it's annoying because people see that post game and they think he's attributing that to the entire issue, and I don't think he is. But I don't know that, but I don't think he is.
I mean, he said it, like box efficiency, X factor. Yeah. I mean, there's how many more synonyms do you need? Yeah. Sign better players, sign moments players. I don't care how you want to define it. Sign somebody that can create a moment. And
so when we say is he protecting the players, is he acting stubborn? I don't think he's wrong on that individual game, but I think all the signs we have are that he doesn't think that is the problem overall. If that makes sense.
But also, people, I'm sorry, I don't want to be again ageist. You have not worked a day in your life if you're asking a current employer to say how crap that their employee is before they're looking to go and fire and move them on. I'm sorry, you've just never run a business before in your life. If you have an underperforming asset, by the way, receptionist, I don't care what business you're in, you're not sitting there saying, yeah, you're crap, you're horrible at your job, we're going to move you on, before you've hired somebody to move them on, before you've said that to interviews. Rohan, but... Sorry?
We've said that to Rohan, but that's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, he's 100%, he's protecting the players, he's trying to do, I have no doubt that he's seething in the background. And publicly, there's a public face. And, a lot of people have thrown this to me on Twitter. Well, George, if you're saying that there was limitations, he said in September when he signed his contract how great the owners are and they're the best owners. They support me in every way. And I'm saying, I don't think you've ever experienced corporate life in your life if you're using that as justification here, because no one is going to, in public, say, you're horrible, I want you to leave. And I'm not.
I think my owners are rubbish.
Yeah. Like my employee is horrible and I hate working for him. You're not going to do that. Look, mate, I do think though, there has been a level of corporate speak all January. Mikel is also not the person to be quiet. The one thing I say, and I said this on Twitter, is you may argue whether he's made the right decisions. And that's totally valid. There's some things that I feel in the transfer market and abroad. Mikel isn't perfect. He's made mistakes. You know what I mean? He's not a perfect person. No one is at the club. But one thing that I think is undoubted is he's somebody that will push for advancement. He's not a stagnant person. He'll get it wrong, but he's not stagnant. So not pulling the plug is not a Mikel thing. And he's very aggressive in it. Mikel's always been aggressive. I have not known a window where he hasn't demanded signings. Even last year, I've not known a window where he hasn't. So when we don't do it, I have a real hard time that it's apathy from him not wanting something.
Yeah. As the singular reason. Mikel didn't want signings. I really don't buy that.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I want to come on to an Odegaard question in a second, but first let's just do this quickly. From Hazy FPL on X. Is there any attacker from our U21s or under 18s George believes could take their chance in the team with all our forwards injured or not performing? You recently did a spotlight on Ismail Kabir, right? Do you want to maybe talk about him?
We did. I'll answer the question. Unfortunately, no. We have a little bit of a dearth right now. Our U16 class is really good. It's actually one of the impacts right now. We have a lot of work to do in the U21s. There isn't
Max,
somebody.
You're up.
Yeah. There's But seriously, even Brando Joseph, there's Louis Zekovic John, there's a lot of Cedric O'Neill, there's a lot of really top wingers that we've recruited in the last couple, I'd say not last couple months, 18 months. There was a big push in the academy to recruit some wingers, and there's talent there, but they're all really young. In the U21 class, there's over 5, we talked about it in the pod, that are going towards the end of their contract. And there needs to be some serious assessment of the academy. We've got new players, and we're just in a period where attacking talent is lacking. And I mean, Cheeto was it, mate. I don't want to go away from it. Cheeto was the one that the academy platformed as having first team potential in center forward. And then beyond that, I mean, he was already young. That was the Ethan Waneri of the attack, right? So yeah, we're waiting for some talents to grow up a bit. I mean, they're like 16, so it's not like, oh my God, we have no talent, but it's just the U21 class and the U18 class is struggling for top end consistent talent.
Yeah. If you want to check out George and a guy called Will, who is another academy, I'm not going to use that word, expert, is they do a great pod, a monthly pod on the Patreon and YouTube member side that you can check out, which is sort of everything going on at the academy. And they also platform certain players you should have a look at on the Spotlight On section on YouTube, which you can check out. Coming to Discord. Can you and George break down the validity or invalidity of this Twitter user, and you can guess who it is, point on how Odegaard limits the ceiling of our team? It would be great to get your wider perspective on his contribution to any potential Arsenal dynasty rather than recent form and past achievements. The Twitter user says that Odegaard has no connection with Havertz, lacks transitional power as the fourth attacker, makes an inverted right back and left back, somehow, redundant, forces the left central midfielder to be a second striker, makes the second striker dynamic affects Martinelli, and there's subpar connection with Saka. I disagree. I think the idea that there's a subpar connection with Saka when that's been the basis of our title charge the last 2 seasons, I think is just rubbish. Here's my feeling on Odegaard. As we were sort of talking about earlier, Odegaard is not going to be the running power that gets a team going. He's not going to be the guy who lights up a stadium with his energy. He needs to be paired, and my feeling this season is he needs to be paired basically with Jamal Musiala. A thrust and a break. And I think that's what we need in this team. Someone who can pull back, pull the tempo, find the eye, the needle pass. When his timing is is on, we know what he can do in terms of those balls into the box in the half space or the clip balls to Timber. We know the connection with Saka. I'd be interested in seeing paired in a different way and pushed over to the left-hand side with a runner and how that all works. But again, we've seen a huge sample with Saka. I think in terms of his timing, his arrivals to the box and how we're finding him in those zones where he can shoot, I think there's scope for us to improve him there. But I think really my overall feeling is we're looking for Martin Odegaard. Some people, I think, are looking for him to be the thrust in this team when Saka is out. He can't do that. If you then want to change that player out for a player who can do that, that's a different conversation. But let's try and judge Martin Odegaard by what he can do. And for me, I think he's worth persisting with in a midfield with him, Rice, +1, that isn't Mikel Merino, and that's another whole other conversation, who is a thrust, who can dribble, who can carry, who can shoot. Because that's not Odegaard, but in terms of in the press, in terms of getting us through the thirds, he is still absolutely brilliant.
I don't think he is in the Saka, Saliba, Rice spine that people say, and that's where I'm at with it. I don't think that he should be thrown to the wolves. I don't think he should be sold. I think he's an integral member of the squad, but he's limited, and he's limited in very specific things that unfortunately Arsenal will face more of. And I think when they talk about the relationship with Saka, what you're asking is, I think a lot of people are intimating Saka solves a lot of what you just said. The thrust, the carry, and by having Martin Odegaard, you don't have him in those zones as much as you could. That's the point. It's not that they don't have a relationship. They clearly do. I mean, I think to say not is like hyperbole, and the way that they talk about each other, they clearly love playing with each other. So to say that they don't have a relationship is unfair. But I think that's the platforming point that people make, and I think that people miss. I just want Martin Odegaard to be susceptible to change. I want Martin Odegaard to be put in situations that he excels in. And I don't think that he's some immovable player from the team. And people make that argument, though, with Odegaard. And I think that's the biggest pushback. Like, I don't want to beat around the bush. Like when NNT talks about Odegaardism, he has a lot of hyperbole to the way that he talks about it. That, for me, is what's valid. That Odegaard is an immovable player that must be the spine of the team and can't be moved around, both from the right to the left, can't be taken out of games, has to be somebody that is in the 11 undoubted. That, for me, I don't agree with. But what you said, by the way, I think that Martin Odegaard will do his best work if he transitions to being a full-time deep line playmaker, personally.
Yeah, agree.
And that's just a different profile that you need in the squad.
He can't deal with contact in the way you need someone to be able to receive in the block. So that then it's like, okay, so then do you take him out of the team? It's like, well, hang on a minute. He's got loads of other skills. Like, what is this thing? I'm going to judge him by these parameters, and if he can't do that, then let's get him out of the team.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah. I basically am with you. I think I'm interested in seeing him moved. I'm interested in seeing him paired differently. I'm interested in seeing him pulled deeper. I think when he can collect off the centre backs, I think some of his movement and getting us out of the block and the knocks around the corner and the spacing and the timing of that. Honestly, some of the stuff he does is absolutely brilliant. But if we're looking for someone I saw a clip today of, is it a Nasri goal or a Fabregas goal? It's Nasri and Fabregas. They're receiving centrally and they're turning and they're going and one of them shoots and scores. And I'm like, that ability to receive in there, Martin Odegaard does not have the strength to consistently do that. He doesn't. So get him facing play, get him picking locks. I even said this in terms of when we're breaking down blocks at the minute, I'd rather see a signing, but if we're talking at the moment, we have two fullbacks in Lewis Skelly and Timber who I believe can receive much better in a block than Martin Odegaard. So I'd rather see them swapped. I'd rather see Odegaard playing that pass into Miles. By the way, we actually haven't spoken about Miles. He was unbelievable.
Mate.
Unbelievable against Man United. He is what a talent. And you're
not even seeing 3/4 of what he can offer. Like, when you talk about receiving in the block, mate, when you see it, you will be so annoyed that we didn't do it earlier. It's all I'm going to say. Look, I just think, again, the whole Odegaard topic is we're potentially losing Jorginho and Zinchenko and Partey, by the way. That deep midfield, I would like to see Martin Odegaard transition to that full time. Somebody that is outside the block, has the time to receive, and can dictate our build up. People look at that and they say, wow, you don't like him. And that's the problem with it, right? I will say this. You can't be a leader of a team if you're only good in a game state or in particular game states, right? He's got multiple skills, but if you're not universally able to impose your game on any game state, you don't deserve to be a pillar, a spine player. And that's fine, by the way. That doesn't mean you're a bad player. That doesn't mean you need to be banished. And that doesn't mean you don't have value in the squad. All of those things are true, right? And I think that's where the biggest debates come in. I look at Saka, Rice, Saliba. When I talk about pillar signings, I say those three players. For me. Yeah, those are the ones. Those are the only players in the squad that I believe, no matter what game, they can adapt and play to what you need. And we need an attacker that does that as well. We need, if you want another midfielder to do that, then okay, we need that. But I do think a majority, 90% of your team are going to be people that aren't pillars. This is going to be my last point on it. So being a pillar isn't the end all be all, right? But it's about defining who should be. And that is important.
Yeah. We can't have 11 pillars. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Let's come to a few more questions before we finish off. Let's come to. We actually. Someone put, who do you like to do outside of watching Arsenal play? I'm assuming you mean what, rather than you're asking me and George what we do at bedtime.
Pause.
But maybe we'll answer that at the end. Let's do one more football question. Okay. I am so far away from this, but we actually haven't discussed this on the channel, and it's only fair. Question was, if Arteta was to leave or get sacked, that's a huge if, by the way, it's not happening, and I don't want it to happen, etc. Who would you like to replace him? For me, a couple of names spring to mind. Thomas Frank from a utilising resources and the guy perspective. Andoni Iraola from a high energy, high tempo, exciting football perspective. And probably Xabi Alonso in terms of football pedigree and someone who I believe has a game model that would suit us. Those are my three.
Yeah, a lot of overlap, but I don't want to just say the same managers there. I like that list. Different levels. Like I would think Alonso would be plan A, Areola would be plan B, and Thomas Frank would be plan C, so to speak. I'll do some other. Look, there's a link that Nkazi would love to play in the Premier League. I think he would kill it with Arsenal, objectively. The exact same kind of football, but is somebody that is a little bit more vertical, fundamentally. And I think he would do really, really well. I've always loved Marcelo Gallardo as like that prospect potential who did brilliant things with River Plate. That's more of a plan C out there. I don't know how he'll do. I think Nkazi would be like a plan A that I think he would do brilliantly. And look, I can't deny, I think Julian Nagelsmann is the next. Yeah. And you have to wait. Like that's somebody that can change a club. So you convince him outside of a German national team commitment to do something. Look, I really like Areola, though, in general. I think that's the perfect manager ready for the next step and somebody that's bright. And whoever gets him is going to get one of the next better managers on the market. I would be afraid if Spurs, a United, Chelsea, anybody with the top six got him and were smart enough to get him, I think could do really well with much better resources.
I have no concerns about him on the pitch. My only concern about him is off the pitch. Whenever I've seen him interviewed and etc., his communication isn't. It's not Amorim. It's not Arteta. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's not doesn't mean that you can't manage a club and win things. Absolutely, you can. But I think if you look at who's won things consistently in the Premier League, it's usually a man who can communicate extremely well. I think that's one of the.
That's why I do like Nkazi. I'm not gonna lie. I thought that it makes sense. He's such a smart guy, and he's been dominating Serie A for a while. And it makes sense that he's looking at Arsenal. Like that's the exact type of club that's playing his type of football. Yeah, and he's really smart. Has won trophies. Yeah, I think Nkazi would be brilliant.
Yep, for sure. Let's come to the last football question from Skaman on the Discord. He says, what percentage of importance do you attribute to confidence in performance? Do you think fan support can realistically influence it? I think I always think with these things, it just needs to be put in perspective. It's an issue, but if you play the right pass, everything comes. Do you know what I mean? So we talk a lot about tactics and stuff on this podcast, and we should. I think that is not the primary way of understanding football, but it's a massive way of understanding what's going on. These things are support, I would say. And they all add up together to be something that's really important in terms of, rhythm and atmosphere and all those sorts of things. I don't know. Probably if we were to say confidence plus, atmosphere plus, feeling in a stadium, I think it's probably something like 15 to 20%. Maybe a little bit less of an outcome. Maybe I've slightly overestimated that, but if you add everything up at the sort of soft factory in that camp, maybe home advantage, that sort of stuff.
Look, I believe in this stuff. I think it really matters quite a bit, and it really transmits energy, massively. And look, it doesn't just have to be the crowd, but I think I'm really big in that mental side of the game, personally. And I think why I'm big on it is because I think it sways in moments. I don't think a big crowd support makes you a Ballon d'Or player. But I do think in moments where you may struggle, in moments even where you're on top and maximizing your chances and being clinical and confident and taking your chances, a lot of those things have to do with environment and support and how you're feeling loved. And fans have a crucial role in that. When we have all these conversations about having a 12th man, you look at Anfield, their entire history about Europe and how they've been able to create that history has been from that crowd. More than any player, any legend. And so, yeah, for me, I think it's huge, mate. And I will say this, though, and I have to be objective in my analysis. I don't know about you, but it's the first sign of disgruntlement I've seen in 18 months.
Yeah.
From the home fans. And I think that's reflective though, mate. Like, I think as much as you want to believe in the project, they have always been a good barometer for how a club might feel, more than social media or anything. And when you have a look, and with 18 or 15 minutes left, you see empty seats against Newcastle, I think that says something to a team that has been supported well for the last 18 months. And you can't question the support of Mikel from the fan base, from a patient's perspective. All things considered, I think Arsenal fans in general, I will never doubt their patience. We may be overreactionary, and I do say this, I think we're very swing. We're either really, really good or we're really, really bad, and that's all in the space of 2 days. But as a whole, the faith and the patience that they've had in this so-called process or project has objectively been impeccable. If you really want to take a step back, 5-6 years, like, it's been there. So I think it's important. I did have one question at the expense of making this super long of a podcast. I think sporting directors in general are going to be huge. Do you have a specific name idea that you really feel that this team needs? Because it's the last pillar, so-called off the pitch, that is a question mark. And with everything that's gone on this season, right? What do you think is the most important thing for us in that position?
Luis Campos does interest me. And the reason I say that is because we don't need a great communicator. We have that in Arteta. It would be nice. It would be lovely to have that. Absolutely lovely to have that. But I'm not looking for someone who can sell a project. We don't need that anymore. I'm not looking for someone to do bargains for us. We're not Brentford, we're not Brighton, we're not Bournemouth. Like, this idea that we need to go and sign gems from wherever, that's not the who are we trying to be? I think something like a Luis Campos or maybe, I'm sure there's other names out there that can speak to that as well, but that's the one I think about. Gives you a sense of credibility in those big conversations. It puts you in, where's Jude Bellingham going? It puts you in, where's Harry Kane going? It puts you in, I'm not saying we're going to get those players, but historically we have not been in those conversations. We have to face it. The only one we've really been in was the Declan Rice conversation. Where's Declan Rice going next? Mm-hmm. To compete at the very top level, which is where I think both of us want to be, we need someone who maybe swings a little bit further back to the Raul Sanyehi days, has a bit of a black book of contacts, has a bit of the ears of certain agents, is in conversations saying, whose contract is up in 2 years, what are we doing with that person, what's Nagelsmann's situation? You're looking around, everyone in football, and someone like a Luis Campos who's come from that area, I would be interested in. Look, someone like an Alabe or, a Rositzky, they're fine, but I think to make a statement as a club, I would quite like that, to be honest. I think it puts us in a different, off the field, it puts us in a different conversation.
So personally, I think we already have the young genius in Jason Ato, who you don't know what he could be. He seems to have a lot of praise inside the game, and he's done well. I don't think pairing a Thomas Rositzky, which, by the way, isn't as lazy as it says, but I don't think that's right, And it does need experience. I'm going to maintain, and everything that I've seen this season, we actually need somebody more so than experience, somebody that Mikel respects and feels challenged by, has some gravitas to his work. I look at Simon Rolfs at Leverkusen, I think is brilliant. I think Berta, who was at Atletico Madrid, that also just left and is on gardening leave, perfect for defining a philosophy, experience. Olabe, another one. Those three make up, and I'm not just citing the links, those genuinely have been Arsenal shortlist, and I completely agree with every single one. I think Rolfs is slightly more of the young genius of those three. He's certainly younger. He hasn't had as much experience as the other two. I think Berta from Atletico Madrid probably is my prime candidate, purely because he's built a team that's played the philosophy of football that we're looking to play, gone through multiple sectors. And Atletico Madrid, out of any club, you could argue, have the best historical record of producing strikers.
Yeah.
Of any time, like right?
Yeah.
And so from this perspective, there's a symmetry on the pitch, but there is somebody there that has consistently brought top end attacking talent that has maximized their talent. And it's not just Simeone, but like he's built that team consistently, replacing your Falcaos, your Agueros. Like, you know, they have got some serious talent over the years. And Bert has been controlling it for absolute years. So I think he would be a really smart choice. I think Olabe could be lazy. Could be. But he's really good. And I like him. And we clearly like a lot of what Sociedad do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, he brings experience, but I think it's about being like, are we trying to find the next Michael Edwards, or are we trying to find Michael Edwards? And I'm like, go get Michael Edwards. Like let's stop trying to be this budget team who do it. That's not who we signed. Declan Rice for £100 million. We're in a different league. Mm-hmm. We have to act like it. We'll finish there. Hopefully that was in some way therapeutic. It was for me. I feel better actually. Yeah. Look, this is a tough season, man. This is a tough season, and it weirdly, before the Newcastle game, we were 13 unbeaten, but it doesn't feel that way. And I don't want to pretend that, you know, it's all fine. It isn't all fine. It's going poorly. Mm-hmm. But there is still a lot to play for. And absolutely, we could be sat here and turned around in a month's time and saying, look, you know, we're a couple of points behind Liverpool, or maybe they dropped off, whatever. They have a hard end of the season. There is no reason to be positive. And until there is no reason to be positive, I'm going to try and hold on to it. So thank you for sticking with us. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thanks for watching and listening. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.